Hey guys, what's up? So we've got an answer as to the situation with the limits on the number of Pokemon you can have in Sword and Shield. That can go for the Galar Pokedex. In this interview, they asked Junichi Masuda about why they've done this. He's responded by saying there are a couple of different parts to the thinking behind it. But most of the biggest reason is because of just the pure number of Pokemon they have. We already have over 800 confirmed Pokemon species, and if you include the Galar region itself, it's going to be over 900 definitely. And now that they're on the Nintendo Switch, there is a need to make higher quality animations. But even more than that, it's down to the battle system. They're trying to make sure that everything is balanced to give all the Pokemon that appear in the games a chance to shine. They knew at some point they weren't going to be able to constantly support all the Pokemon, and found that Sword and Shield was about the right point for them to go back and reevaluate what would be the best selection of Pokemon that appeal to the widest audience, while keeping into consideration the balance of the battle system. It just isn't just going to be all new Pokemon in the Galar region Pokedex. There's still going to be a lot of favourites that fans will be able to bring over that they've adventured with previously. But the idea is just basically to balance the situation. My personal view on that is I can understand their point. My bit of concern is when are they going to introduce the other Pokemon? Is it going to be maybe potential updates in the future, maybe 20 Pokemon at a time? Or are we going to have to wait for maybe a Sword and Shield 2? Or some sort of alternative version, or maybe the Sinnoh remakes before we get to potentially the full list of Pokemon? For me, I'm not too fussed. I am a little disappointed that we can't access them all. But I can understand their points, more so from the animation point of view, rather than actually the issues to do with the rebalancing of battling situations. Because I think whatever decision they make, there's always going to be people's favourites. You're going to have those pseudo-legendary Pokemon that are always going to be used above other Pokemon. You're going to have other Pokemon that are just going to fall by the wayside anyway. So regardless of how many you have, it's just the natural progression. They then ask about the selection process of the Pokemon, about deciding which Pokemon you wanted ported first, how much of that had to do with fan favourites versus balancing out types and abilities. He mentions there are a number of factors. The main reason was to do with the setting of the game. Because it's the Galar region, which is UK based, they spent a lot of time discussing which Pokemon would make sense to match the region. And then they made the decisions from there, but they also selected types that make sure the battles are balanced and provide an exciting kind of battle experience. They ask about whether the Sword and Shield series is a kind of jumping off point for the future of the Pokemon series. Because of the introduction of Pokemon Home and Pokemon Bank, and a lot of things coming around. Does this feel like a new era in the Pokemon series? Junichi Masuda says, I think it might be fair to say it's not a transition, but for example, a Game Freak, the director for these games, is passing on a lot of responsibility to the younger generation to kind of move the franchise forward. Also, being on the Nintendo Switch allows new playstyles, not just handheld, but also on the TV screen. I think it's definitely going to represent a new chapter for Pokemon. I can understand this point of view, considering that Pokemon games, they are over 20 years old. You know, even some of their younger staffing, if you imagine some of the most loyal staffing and assuming they've been experienced for a few years, they're going to be they would have been in the 30s or 40s coming into the projects with Pokemon. So many of them will be reaching near the upper end of, well, closing into retirement age, or not wanting to have to take on as much responsibility. I do feel this is like that kind of stage where they're actually transitioning, where they're trying to take on less responsibility and say, actually, we want you guys, the new generation of people, to start taking up the decisions. And so we're going to take a little bit more of maybe like a consultancy seat. So maybe they're doing fewer hours, maybe they're just sitting back and actually looking at the project from their ideas and seeing, how best to advise them. I do think this is a good idea because it's better to do this with a brand new region than to do something midpoint and then take a completely different stance on it. Oh, we're going to let it out to the new people, because that risks exposing more weaknesses and more issues. So what do you think of the situation with with actually handing it on to the future? Is this a good idea? Where do you see Pokemon in maybe 10 years' time? Do you think it'll still be as popular as it is? How many Pokemon do you think we're going to receive within that duration? And do you see either of the two of them retiring or stepping down quite soon? Because are we waiting for another announcement? I remember with Reggie, he represented America and for the Nintendo company, and he stepped down last year. Are we simply just waiting for the announcements from Junichi Masuda to be following on to do the same? As always, like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe, and leave your comments down below, and thank you, and I'll see you next time.